on YouTube after it renders, and then you'll be able to go back and watch it and catch up and rewatch it over and over and over again. Sound good? All right, fantastic. Danny, teach us something about
Hello.
Photoshop.
Thank you all so much for coming today. This hopefully will be something that is beneficial in some way for each one of you. But yeah, today we just want to have a good time, but we want to have a space for everybody to just be open and know that mistakes are going to be made and we're going to learn, and we don't have to learn at the same pace, but we all want to learn Photoshop. We'll all have an interest in that. And so I don't know, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully we can all follow everywhere, but just reach out if there's issues or navigation problems. I'm going to start here. This is our dashboard for the challenge. This is just a place where everything is. Teams and SharePoint are the same platform. Basically, they communicate with each other. And so this is just an organized way to find the same things that are on the Teams channel. I know some people are familiar with Teams and some aren't. So this is more like a web page look that may be easier to navigate around. But these right here are your folders. And so week 1 has all of the files in it that we had talked about that are also, again, on Teams. And here, this Teams channel will just link you straight back to the team interface. This is the button to join the workshop. I'll make sure that's updated every week. These are just some resources for images that we'll talk about later. And the asynchronous workshops, like Steve had mentioned, we're going to record so that those who weren't able to attend today or any of the other Fridays when this is available can go back and watch it. And those will be posted here after each workshop. And then, so basically the goal of this whole workshop is to learn, collaborate, and apply. We want to learn together the new skills. Everybody has something to offer to bring to the table, and you all learn in different ways. And so that's how we reach bigger audiences, and it's easier to collaborate with creative people when we have, that's why Teams, we chose Teams for the platform, the chat, sharing files, asking questions. And this is a private team, so it's not just open to everybody, but everybody who's registered for the workshop is in there. So it's a place where hopefully you can take risks and know that we're all learning here, we're teaching each other, and how we apply that to the unique projects that you have, whether that's teaching or just learning on your own, whatever projects you're working on, creating posters, presentations. We just hope that this helps in some way. So this is a little bit just about the back-end platform. And in Photoshop, there was a file that was the legend. This just kind of, most of you are familiar with Photoshop, so you understand it. But I'll be talking about a lot of this toolbar on the left side. There's the toolbar on the right. Once you click on these tools on the left, it populates new stuff at this top area. Then you've got your right toolbar and the layers palette. So this is kind of
Danny, let me interrupt here one quick.
Sure.
You may want to throw your Teams interface out to full screen in order to be able to see everything a little bit bigger. That just might help a little bit. Thanks, Danny.
Sure. Yes, at any point, if you can't see something or you're lost or I'm going too fast, just let me know. But this just is hopefully a helpful tool that's in that files folder for you to look at. So this is where we're going to begin. And this is going to be over the series. So today we're not going to completely finish a composition, but we're starting something that each week we save at the end of the week and we start from where we left off. And that way, by the end of the week, we can see our progression, but we also are building towards telling a story. And so today we're just really focusing on the pen tool, removing this rock, putting it in a new background, adding new elements into it. So it's just changing up how can we take part of a photograph the sections of it out that we want and place it somewhere new. So that's just kind of the gist of everything. So, all right, the first part is Photoshop's pretty smart, and it gets smarter every time there's an update. Whereas usually when we wanted to select an object out of an image somewhere, we'd either have to use the pen tool or this magic wand and slowly select parts and try to get all the parts for us to select it and pull it out. Well, thankfully, Photoshop now has this select subject. So in order to get this on the top toolbar, you see the magic wand, or your interface or workspace may look different depending on what setting you have. But all we're simply going to do is just click on the fourth tool down, which mine shows magic wand. And that populates this toolbar at the top of your screen. And there you see select subject. So if we click that, marching ants around the rock, it just really pulls out the foreground, which is in this case exactly what we want to highlight, because we want just the rock. We don't want any part of the rest of the picture.
So what you're telling me is that if I just click on that select subject, chances are it's going to grab the subject automatically.
Yes.
Is that right?
Which
Wow.
makes things a lot faster, quicker, easier, especially when you're just trying to pull sections of the image out. So now that we have that selected, if we look at our layers palette, we just see one layer. And a key command, which I'm all about key commands. I don't know how many of y'all are using Macs versus PCs, so Steve's going to help a little bit about the key commands with the PC. But with the Mac, if you just hit Command J, it takes whatever your selection is, whether it's a whole layer or a selection that you have selected on. For instance, when we had the background image, we only had the rock selected. So when I hit Command Jump or Command J, it jumped to
Be Control J on a PC.
Yeah, Control J. Yes, Control and Command are basically the two keys. So we've got this new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and name it, just because when you get a lot of layers going, just easier for me to refer back to one that's named.
Hey, Danny, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So if we selected the select subject button, but it didn't select the whole rock, how would we remedy that?
So what are you seeing whenever you click it?
It selects everything over until like the Home Depot logo with PM Miller, and then it leaves off the right side of the rock.
Okay. So what version of Photoshop are you on?
I've got 21.01 release, 2019.
Okay.
Danny, I can help in there and help with that if you want me to.
Sure, jump in there.
If you go to the tools over on the left-hand side and you click and hold on that fourth tool down, you know, the little where the window will open up. There's a little tool in there called Quick Selection Tool. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, and if you'll choose the Quick Selection Tool and then just pull the Quick Selection Tool over the area that's not selected, it will add it to that particular area for you. Is that working?
Yes.
Good deal. There you go. Thanks, Danny.
Yeah,
great question.
Mm-hmm.
And what if it selects more than what you want it to? Okay. So, for example, when I selected the bottom right,
it went out.
Okay.
Yeah. All you need to do is hold down the alternate or option key, and you'll notice the brush turns to a minus, and you rub over the part that you don't want.
Yeah, it's almost like a magnetic tool. So I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know if y'all saw that, like, let's just say that it selected the rock plus, I guess that's a trash can. And we don't want that. So you see, it's kind of hard to see the mouse, but it has the plus. I hold down option, it's showing you the minus. So if we hold down the option key and just move our mouse, it's taking away outside of that rock, the part that we don't want. And it's magnetizing, if you will, back to the area that we do want. And this is using that object selection tool. And so we can kind of clean up the edges of, and sometimes it's very tedious like that, but it comes back to the marching ants around the rock. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay.
Good deal.
All right. So I'm just going to deselect. So we've got this rock as its own layer. So if we hide the background layer, we see that now we have the freedom to put any kind of background in there. So I'm going to just leave those on for a second. And in our files, we have Texas Paladero Canyon. I'm just going to drag that in here. You'll notice that the bounding box, which is the blue rectangle with the small boxes around, is ready to just drag each corner to scale it out. You can move the image to place it wherever you'd like. Just make sure it covers and just hit return. So now you see that this layer, it's already labeled because we drug that from the folder into here. And it's on our top layer, so we're just simply going to pull it right under the rock. So now Smokey is in the Paladero Canyon of Texas. And the
Let's
reason
see. I'm not seeing that. Is everybody else seeing the Smoky thing, or is it frozen up?
Let's see.
Yeah, everybody's seeing it. Okay, so no, yes. Okay, good.
All right, trying to find everybody. I guess I can. All right. So now we have the option to, if you just click on the rock layer, hopefully it will pull up these transform boxes around so that you can scale it down or up. And I'm just going to place this into the image where I think just having in mind the end goal of realistic. We're trying to make it look realistic, like we are creating something new, but as if it's always been there. And it will be a process, but for right now, I just want to make the rock a little bit smaller, even hide this girl and know that is not me. And so we have the rock in there, and now we don't necessarily want Smoky. We want to apply our own, we'll say, texture for first. We're going to go back to our files. There's a file named texture. Just going to drag it in. Same process. I'm going to actually rotate it.
So Danny, you just drug that in from the Finder or Explorer, from the folder straight onto Photoshop, and it just opened it on that document?
Yes. Now if
Okay.
you pull it through Photoshop down to the app, it's going to open in its own document.
Ah, gotcha.
Drag, it's just going to be very, very large. Still works the same way because you can make it smaller. So the goal here is we want the texture only to live inside of the rock. So what we're going to do here, it's called a clipping mask. So in your layers palette on the right side, there's two ways to do this. The one way is to right click on that layer and you'll see clipping mask. If you go ahead and click that, it looks like it disappeared. But thankfully the bounding box, you can see the edges, so you can just drag that in.
Hey,
you can make
Danny,
it. Yes.
Melinda had a quick question about how to get the rock into a separate layer. So you might want to go back over that right quick.
Okay, sure thing. What I love about Photoshop is the history palette. You can go back to anywhere in the process. Okay, so after I'll go ahead and get it selected. So now that the rock is selected here, all we do is this Command J, which jumps the selection of whatever layer you're on into a new layer. If you're on a PC, it's Control J. And that's how we get a new layer of Smoky into its own layer.
So So what it's doing there is when you make a selection and you do Control J or Command J, it just copies that selection up to a new layer.
So another way we could do this process with the subject selected is to create a layer down here with the plus sign. This is at the bottom of the layers palette. It's just a new layer. Go back to the smoky layer. I've hit copy and I hit paste. So I copied and pasted this into a new layer that I made. It's just additional steps, but there's always ways around, multiple ways of doing things in Photoshop. So does that answer the question? Okay. All right. So
Is everybody up with us right now? Are we in good shape? Are we going too fast? Or
Could you talk through one more time how you got the image of the canyon in there?
yes.
Good.
So that will be from our files that I've placed the exercise files. All I do is find that image and drag it into the document that I'm working on.
So you just drop it on that black area of the palette.
Just drag and
it'll
let go,
automatically
and
add.
it'll populate right on your artboard. And it's got the bounding box, which is just the borders that allow you to create.
Thanks for checking in on G10 stuff. Oh, you on mute? Sorry.
It's okay. All right. So that's how we get the background into the new document, and then we just pull it underneath the rock. We're not really worrying about our background image anymore. That's just a starting point. You can even delete it if you want. I'll leave it there. So we've got the rock.
So to move that background, all you did was click in the gray area to the side of the thumbnail and drag it to wherever you needed it.
Yes.
Oh, that's easy. Okay.
See it like that. As you move it around, the blue bar that's populating is just saying it's going to go there.
And the reason we're doing that is because whatever layer is on top, that's the one that you're going to see the most of. Okay. It's like if you're stacking transparencies one on top of another, whichever one's on top, you're going to see the most of it.
Yes. All right. So I'm just going to make the rock smaller again.
So you did that by clicking on the layer where the rock was? Make sure that layer was active? Okay, good.
Making sure when I click on the rock, it automatically shows that layer. And I just grab the corner and drag to whatever scale I want and hit enter.
What if the corners aren't showing up? Sorry for all the questions.
No.
That's why we're here. Great question.
So I'm not sure if you have this check mark up on the top toolbar. It says show transform controls. If you have that clicked, it should show them. If you don't have it checkbox, it will not show.
So if I accidentally had the selection or like the magic wand tool selected and then it randomly selected something on the rock image and that's the only part that's being selected in movable, how do I make it not select that one part of the rock layer?
So you want the whole layer versus a section of it. Is that?
Yeah.
So let's.
You need to unselect. Just hit Control or Command D, and that'll deselect.
Got it.
Yeah. Every time you see marching ants and you move something, it's going to move whatever's in the marching ants, like that. And if you don't want that, Control Z is your best friend, or Command Z.
Oh yeah.
Which means undo, or the history palette. You can always go back and undo things kind of in time. If only life worked that way. All right. So we've got the rock. Everything's deselected as far as there's no marching ants. And from here, we're going to pull in that texture again. So we go back to our files, pull in texture. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate it.
So how did you rotate that, Danny?
Whenever you pull it in, the bounding boxes automatically show up. And if you just take your mouse out to the corner, it will automatically.
Oh, I see. You get that little bent cursor kind of thing
Yes.
there.
And so you can just drag. A tip would be to hold shift down before you start dragging your mouse so that it turns. You can find the straight turns better than if you didn't have shift. It's like, oh, how am I going to find if this is straight? Shift just helps turn it better. So now we want to put that in the clipping mask of the rock. One way to do that is the right click with clipping mask. The other way is hold down Option in between the two layers and you see that icon pop up. When you click that, the texture is only inside of the rock because the rock is the mask and it's only allowing whatever's in the rock to show up with the texture, if that makes any sense.
So the clipping mask, basically what it does is it just puts whatever's on top inside whatever's on the layer below it.
Yes.
Right?
So if
Cool.
you could even drag, we'll use the layer that we're not using, and you drag it in between, well, it's locked. It's
Yeah.
Okay, you drag it in between those two. Now, well, it's got to be on top, I guess. It's still in the clipping mask, and so we still see just that image inside the rock.
Yeah.
Danny, I have a quick question. This is Cassandra.
Mhm.
What I'm seeing, I am still seeing the Texas scene.
Okay.
I haven't, like, I don't know if I'm the only one. I mean, I can hear you. It's everything is fine, but it's almost like my screen has frozen on the where you drug the Texas scene and then you resized. It looks like you just haven't clicked that check mark yet. So I'm like stuck in that spot.
Unshare. I can unshare and then I'll reshare and maybe that.
Yeah, and then reshare again. Yeah.
Okay. It might just be me though, so I apologize.
No,
That's
no, no,
okay.
no. Thanks for doing that.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I can see it now. Yep.
okay, good deal. Sometimes
you.
there's bugs all over the place. Technology. Okay, so is
right.
everybody feeling okay up to this point, or do we have questions? Completely lost?
I would love for you to do that masking step one last time again.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. Okay. So,
I'm completely lost. I'm way back from the very beginning. I'm trying to figure out how to get the rock into Photoshop.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good.
we can work there too. So, all right. In your files, we have a rock image.
Yeah.
The files, were you able to download the files beforehand, or are you able to find the files now?
I just now found the files. I didn't know that I had to download them beforehand, and I'm downloaded the rock, and now I can't find where I downloaded it. So I'm having issues finding all that.
Okay. So if you download it again, can you put it on your desktop, or are you able to find the rock on your computer?
I'm
okay.
Give me a minute. Y'all just keep
Sure.
going. I'll just have to go back later and review all this, but just keep going because I don't want to hold everybody up. So just keep going.
All right. So back to the clipping mask. So we're at pulling the texture in. So when we go back to our files, we find the file texture. And with our Photoshop document still open, we just simply drag and let go of our mouse. It automatically will populate onto your artboard with the bounding boxes. I just like to rotate it. I hit return or enter. So now over here in the layers palette, we have this texture that we only want inside of the rock. So I'm going to right click, and there's so many options, but we're looking for clipping mask. So if we just say create clipping mask, you'll notice on the layer palette this small arrow. It's saying this is inside of the layer below it. So you can see the bounding box, And if you just drag it around, you find the texture only within the rock. That's the clipping mask part of it. So
what little arrow? Where was the little arrow? Sorry, that went fast. I didn't see where the little arrow was. So it's so small.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so on the layers palette,
yep,
the layer texture, see how it's got this little arrow out to the left?
Yes.
That means this layer is in a clipping mask. So if I take that off, it becomes just a layer on top of a layer on top of a layer. But because we want to isolate just this texture inside of the rock, that's why we do the clipping mask. So that now the rock looks like a whole new rock. It's got a different texture to it. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this is just to give you a little backstory and keep y'all engaged maybe with the story behind it. Palo Duro Canyon is where I grew up in Texas. And so I've chosen to put the rock in Texas. And something about my hometown is the cherry donut. It's something that I absolutely love and I miss. So I'm going to pull this cherry donut in the same way that we've pulled in the background and the texture. And as you can tell, it's very blurry and it's very ugly. And that is on purpose because there'll be times when we need to clean up images in Photoshop. And so I've left it a little ugly so that I could show what we're going to do with masking. And this is just a real basic step into masking. So this texture in the rock is a clipping mask. And what we're going to do with the cherry donut layer is just a mask. It's not going to clip into anything. Basically, we are going to add a mask over it so that I can erase and undo without losing the image. And that may not make sense yet, but on the layers palette at the bottom, if you hover over, you see add a layer mask. And this is the icon that's a square with a circle in it. Whenever I click that, on the cherry donut, you see how it has this white artboard, and that is my mask. So if I have this selected, and then you see in the donut that, I'm gonna zoom in, all this ugliness around the edges. I want to clean up that. And so we're going to shift over to the left layer palette. And at this bottom, you see these swatches that are black or white and black. Whenever we're on the mask and we go to our erase tool, we have to make sure that these swatches are showing. But on the erase tool, now my eraser is very, very large. And a quick way to change the size and the hardness of your eraser is to hold down Control Option, scroll your mouse up and down, or left and right for the size. And if that is a little difficult, then you can change the size here. And when you pull your mouse over onto your artboard, it'll show you, see my circles getting a little smaller each time. But for me to visually see it as I'm changing it is why I use the key commands, Control Option, and I hold those down, move my mouse up and down or side to side. So I want this pretty sharp as far as what I'm going to erase, and I don't need it quite that big.
What is Control Option on a PC?
It would be Control Alternate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so now that I have my eraser with unsteady hands, I'm going to go around. And this is where just the tediousness of cleaning up images happens in Photoshop. As I erase, you can see over in the layers palette this black line. It's showing me what I've erased. If I right-click on that mask and I disable that, it's going to say this doesn't exist, but if you want to enable it, you can. It's showing you what was there before without deleting your mask. I want to enable it. You can see that it's cleaning up the edges. Now, with a mask, let's say I just accidentally erased through the donut. This is where a mask is very important, is whenever you have, you can go over here to your swatches and make sure black is on top, which, Steve, this would be the delete, or you said it really well the other day, of the absence of and whatever the other one.
Yeah, the thing about mask is that the color black conceals and white reveals. That's a good little poem to remember right there. So if you paint with black, you're going to conceal something. And in this case, she's concealing what's underneath, which are those clouds, right? And if she painted with white, she would reveal what's underneath the mask. See that happening? Isn't that cool?
But, okay, so let me get the cherry donut back.
Yeah.
And it does with a mask, it takes, if you reveal everything or conceal everything, it goes back to its original state. Now I'm going to delete this mask altogether. And this little icon on the donut layers palette, you see that on the cherry donut and you see it on the Paladar Canyon and the texture. That means a smart object. And you can't erase anything. See how my eraser, when I hover over, does not allow me to erase on the donut because this is a smart object. So that means what a smart object is it has an original landing place. Since we brought this in, if I double click it, you don't see that anymore. Now I can edit it. We don't want to erase the whole thing. I could go in here and I could delete the edges that I was trying to delete earlier. And I'm going to make it very, whatever we call that, recognizable, so that when we go back to our image, there's a huge chunk in it and there's no mask here. That's because its original place, we have manipulated the image. Now, this is populating a whole new window tab within Photoshop. So double clicking on a vector, or not a vector, but a smart object, which is what that little icon is, allows you to open up a new document up here of just that layer. And if you want to edit it here, you hit save and it automatically will change that here without changing or adding a mask. Little advanced, but just for the sake of speaking. And then let's see. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to undo all that. It's just letting you know what's here, what you can see. So to have a mask on the cherry donut, to be able to, there we go, edit that layer, that's why this is important. And we're only going to do this part today just because I know it gets really complicated. But I just wanted to show you the differences between a clipping mask and a mask. So just for time's sake, we're going to now shrink this donut down and pull this and just put it part of our image in the foreground next to our rock. So another thing about Paladar Canyon, where I grew up, cherry donut, is the thing I missed was the cherry donut, but the thing I don't miss was the past, and it's extinct, so I left it behind. So therefore, we're going to pull in T-Rex to represent the extinction. But we also pull it in for part of the new narrative. So the way that we did that was the same process of pulling an image in over the composition. So we've got T-Rex in here, and he looks really odd. I want to put him to where he's peeping around this cap in Paladar Canyon because he wants the cherry donut. So here we're going to pull him all the way under, but if we pull him behind Paladero Canyon, we don't see him at all because this layer is taking up the entire artboard. And T-Rex, if he's in between, now he's in that clipping mask again, like we were talking about earlier. So we don't want him in the clipping mask. So I just simply pull him behind the rock. And this is where I want to erase part of T-Rex. Now there are multiple ways we can do this. I can go in and create a mask like I did with the cherry donut, find my eraser tool, enlarge, and kind of guess, okay, well maybe I'll get most of it, and then I'll flip back and add part of him back. And sometimes that is a good way to go, and other times it's difficult. So that's one way. It just depends on your image. I'm going to show you another way. I'm going to hide T-Rex. I'm going to click on the Texas Paladero background. And like we started, I'm going to find the magic wand or the selection toolbar, which is the fourth down, and find my select subject. Now Photoshop is selecting the cap rock plus a little bit. And so if I don't want this section in there, I'm going to go and hit my option or control and
alternate
or option, and kind of paint back the parts that I do. And it's not always great, but you can get a little more precise depending on what parts that you really are worried about. Now that I have this selected, I'm going to leave it selected, and all I'm going to do is reveal T-Rex and click on T-Rex. With the cap rock selected and the T-Rex layer selected over here, I'm going to hit mask, this button at the bottom with this rectangle and circle, while I'm on the T-Rex. Now you see that it has totally done the opposite of what I was hoping. So in this regard, it is taken away T-Rex in the parts where I want to see him and put him in the parts that I don't want to see him. All you have to do is on the T-Rex layer, hit Command or Control I, which means select inverse, or you can go up to your select menu bar at the top and hit this inverse. Since I did it, it's no longer valid right now. Now there's still a part of T-Rex where I want him to show in front of the cap rock. So I'm just going to make sure I'm clicked on the clipping mask, and I'm going to not use that, but I'm going to go to my eraser tool and slowly erase while I'm on the clipping mask and the T-Rex so that his mouth is now coming around the front of the canyon. And it looks like there's part of him coming around, but then there's part of him hidden. Now, one thing with clipping masks is this link button in the middle. If you want to move, you see that the clipping mask is going to go wherever T-Rex goes. If you want to move T-Rex and leave the clipping mask, you unlink it, make sure you've got T-Rex on it, and he can go. The clipping mask stays exactly where you had it first. Does that make sense? And then you can link it back so that it stays. But whenever you enlarge a layer that has a clipping mask, if you don't have those linked, I'll show you, and you just enlarge it, you're going to lose your mask. So if you really want that to go with you, always make sure that it's linked. Now there's a part of T-Rex that I don't want to see his foot under the rock. That just looks weird. So
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yes. No.
So when you have the rock selected and you made the clipping mask, what What was the step that you did there to do that? Because when I selected the T-Rex and the rock, it wouldn't give me the clipping mask option.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back just a little bit. All right, so when we've hidden T-Rex for just a second so that we can click on the Paladaro Canyon and deselect that. We go to the magic wand or the fourth tool, and at the top, the select subject. Now earlier I know it wasn't selecting exactly. We don't need all of this section. We're mainly looking at this left side. So as long as this edge is right, we're okay. We don't have to really be as specific as we were with the rock. So what I'm going to do after I've hit select subject, it puts those marching ants on. All I'm going to do is bring my mouse over. I'm going to unhide T-Rex. I'm going to select that layer, and you can still see the marching ants because I've not clicked on my artboard. I've only clicked on my layers palette. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layers palette and I'm going to hit add a layer mask. When I do, it does the reverse effect of what I was hoping. So that's when you can go up to select. Oh great, it doesn't work. So we're going to do Control I or Alt I. I think it's actually invert, and I want to give y'all all the ideas, but yes, Steve, chime in at any point.
It's easier just to right click and say invert.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there it is. All these options. I think we've got to click right on the mask.
Right.
Okay. Well, we don't. All we want to make sure is that we Control or Command I. So now we've got the inverse selected, and we can deselect the rock. And with the T-Rex, to get more of his nose in front, that's when we click on the mask of T-Rex and the erase tool and make sure that our eraser has the black on top so that we pull back in the image and not continue to delete the image. But if you can hit X, and you can see over here, switches my foreground in the black and white quickly without having to come over here and do this, click on it. You can just hit X on your keyboard. And if you're on a PC and it's not working, Steve will help you.
Yeah, the X should work on a PC also.
Okay. So we see that this isn't like the greatest way. There's still parts of it. That's where that eraser comes into play, where you do have to spend a little bit of time tweaking things and making sure that, okay, well, I don't want to see this guy through T-Rex. That doesn't look real. So you just come in and you add back where you can. And if there's nothing to add back, it's not going to do anything. So you can just move T-Rex a little bit closer and go in. Looks like there's some white left on his teeth. So I'm going to use the magic wand, and I'm just going to make sure I'm on the mask of T-Rex. I want this white chunk gone. So I'm just going to select that with my magic wand tool, and I'm going to simply hit delete. See that nothing happened? It's because we need to flip the black and white. It's saying I'm going to add that back when I hit delete instead of actually delete it. All right, so I'm going to zoom back out, and now we've got T-Rex peeping around. But we've got this foot. It just does not look real. None of this looks real. But I just want his foot to be gone. So we can either use that same method and erase to where maybe his foot's behind the rock, or you can even Command Z and enlarge. But that's where it gets a little tricky and a few more parts of having to clean him up. But that's because we left it linked. If I unlink it, I want to make T-Rex larger. It leaves the mask, so I can move T-Rex around and not lose as much, but still needing to clean up some areas. So I know that that's really a lot of steps, and that's why we're recording it. But it's a lot of repetitions as well as to pulling in new images, scaling them down, and using a clipping mask or just a regular mask to erase parts that you don't want and leaving parts that you do, or being able to go back and forth. So this is part of week 1, is simply taking an image, putting it into a new background, adding a clipping mask of, in this case, texture, and pulling in 2 additional images to create a new composition, and in this case, the cherry donut and T-Rex. And so what I'm going to do in preparation for next week, real quickly, is drag in a file that you don't have in your folder, which is called assignment. So this is the challenge part of the Photoshop challenge. Is there's always going to be a challenge each week of how can I use what I learned and try something on my own. And so I'm just going to put a black screen behind it so you can actually read it right now. But I hope that you can find some time to go and find an image of your hometown and 2 additional images that help describe the story, and just create a composition just like we did using the rock. So starting with the same rock image as we did over here, which has moved. Starting at this point, and you have this image in your files, and then going in and putting in new background, new elements, and then sharing that, if you will, and if you feel comfortable, on this weekly challenge, just here on the posts. You can start a new conversation, and I can, if you start the new conversation, you can attach, or you can just pull it in there as far as.
And you attach by you attach just simply by hitting the paper clip, and then it'll say upload, and you can upload your image. That'd be great. That way we can all kind of enjoy each other's creativity.
But each week, I'm going to take these off for now. I want you to be mindful to save often, which I didn't do a great job of explaining that through the process. But since we're starting on, you'll know that the file name right here is rock image. And so I want to save as, and this is going to pop up wherever you have your images being saved. And I'm going to save it as week 1, and I'm just going to call it week 1 final, just for today. And I'm going to save it as a PSD, and that's a Photoshop file. What that means is all these layers are going to be here when you open it up, and we want that. But so this is where we leave off, and then next week we're going to actually save as again, and I'm going to save it in week 2, and I'm going to say, label this as week 2 start. So this way we're going to start from this, and we're not working on top of our other work. We have that saved for a purpose, and we can always go back to that one. But this one is where we're starting for next time. And I know right now the rock looks really flat. T-Rex looks crazy. Nothing looks real about this photo. And this is just because of the lack of time and everything. We're doing this in a series because there's so much to it. But we're going to tweak this image more and more, add a few other components, take out the sky, all kinds of things to make it look completely different from the starting point. And we want you to come back each time as you've learned these tools and techniques so that we can approach and apply them over and over again. So,
and be sure and check the team And when you get out, as soon as this video finishes rendering, I'm going to put a link out there, and you'll be able to go to the team, click on the link, and head out and watch this again to kind of re-familiar yourself. I can't even say that word. Look at it again. and enjoy it, and listen, whatever you do, don't get flustered over this. Just have fun with it. And as you're working through it, if you have a question, just go into the team area right there and type in the little chat area. It says, hey, how did you do that? And either Danny or myself will respond to you right there in Teams and help us all work through it together. Because the question you ask may be the question someone else has too.
And right now, I am just saving this as a JPEG for the purpose of posting it onto the Teams page so that you have the assignment there. I'll just label it that. And so I just saved it small for web purposes over here. So what I'm going to do is paperclip. I'm going to upload from my computer. And I have this saved in a folder. So all I'm going to do is just post this in our chat. It'll take just a second to load. And then I'm just going to hit send. So now you have where we left off. You can kind of go back to what this is asking if you want. There's no like awards or punishment if you miss out. So if you don't do that,
it's all fun.
Just to help you in your own time be able to work through, and hopefully if you're so lost, then I want to be able to help you and be here for whatever I need. So, or whatever you need that I can help you with. But I know that was a lot. That's why we recorded it. I'm just throwing that out there, letting you process, and then we can keep in touch on Teams with questions all the time. And so I don't want you to feel like, okay, good luck, you're on your own.
You're not.
I want to know where y'all are at and where you're lost and what's frustrating and what is clear. That's going to be helpful for all of us. So I just want to leave the last 4 minutes up to any questions. Hopefully I didn't talk too much, but thank you all again. I'm going to stop sharing for now. And that way we can I'll leave it open to whoever.
Any final questions from anybody? It's going to be fun.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
All right.
all.
Thank you, Sharon.
And
Thank
the
y'all for
recordings
coming.
will be available. Did you already answer that, Steve? I think.
Yeah, the recording will be available probably within the hour. It'll be out
And I'm
there
going to
again.
put it on that SharePoint side as well.
All right. Good deal, y'all. All right, we're going to get out of here then. I hope you have, Danny, you did a super job. Thank you, my friend. And we're looking forward to the rest of the 4 more sessions together. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
All right. Thank y'all. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
We'll see you, everybody.
All right, bye.
All right. Good job, Danny.
Thank you.
You did it. Way to go. Way to go. I'm proud of you.
Thank you
You
so
did
much.
good.